Okay, so I have a student that came to me and wants to know how to do the draft feature. So looking at the model over here, there's some things that probably need to be fixed. First thing that's before we do the draft feature, and I'll show you that here in just a moment. But let's take a look at this sketch one more time, the basic outline as he calls it. And remember, you don't need to rename your sketches. Just rename your features. The only time you might want to rename your sketches is if it's a part of a feature like a sweep or a loft that you need to find out what the path or the profile of that sketch might be. It just makes it easier to select. So for this part of the class, first part of the class, we're just naming our features. Don't rename the sketches. So we're going to go to our sketch one down here and take a look at this and see what we need to do. So it kind of looks like we have almost everything in place, but doesn't look right. It's still blue. So what you want to do typically is just grab a point and pull on it and see what you need to do to get that thing resolved. So it looks like we can take this line over here, take the top of that line, and with the origin up there, we're going to make that normal too. Now let's do Control Z and get those some of those dimensions back where they should be. But let's go ahead and move this maybe down a little bit. Okay, so we're going to take this, and that point we're going to make that coincident. That helps. So we're going to take the midpoint of this top arc. We're going to go ahead and select that same point that's in the middle of that line over here. We're also going to make that coincident. And it looks like the only thing we need to define down here is the end of this arc. And if we were to pull on a point down here, you can see that it kind of gets longer. So we need a 1 point or 0.15 dimension in that, or 1.5. So we're going to go ahead and select that arc, selecting this line, and we're just going to drop that in place and then go over here to leaders, go to the green check mark. But while that's still selected, let's go over here to leaders. And let's go ahead and make that into its maximum condition. And then let's go ahead and change that value. So green check mark over here. And Control A selects everything 1.5. And now that's fully defined. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. We're going to go ahead and rebuild. This sketch needs some work. So what we're doing is we're emulating what we have over here on the website. This guy. We're trying to emulate that. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these dimensions in here. And actually it might be a little bit easier to look at this sketch down here too. So remember, we're trying to use existing model geometry. And we're going to make relationships with it. For instance, this is going to be coincident, this point, to that edge over here of the model that's already in place. So we're going to go ahead and use that. This 0.15 is going to go down from the origin also to that point. And 0.75 is over here. And then 0.45 goes all the way to the back. Not to the front face, but to the back face. So keep that in mind as we put this together. So let's go back to our model. And let's go ahead and kind of fix this a little bit. So let's go normal to that sketch. So we don't need all this extra geometry in here. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. The dimension goes with it. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. We're going to go ahead and delete that. And that dimension goes with it. This 0.45 is going to be from the back. So let's go ahead and drag that back there. It keeps that value, so we're okay there. And then this thing gets pulled out to the front. So we're going to go ahead and create that coincident relationship here in the front. Now that makes that back line black because it's vertical. It's coincident up here. But now we need that dimension. So we're going to go between this point and the origin up here, the projected origin. Drop that into place. 0.15 should make the rest of the model, rest of the sketch fully defined. We're going to take this 0.13 dimension. We're going to turn that into, let's go ahead and turn that into a diameter dimension. Let's go to leaders. We're going to make that diameter. And we're going to take the value, the precision here, we're going to increase that a little bit to make it, reveal itself as being 1/8 of an inch, 0.125. So once we do that, then we can go ahead and rebuild it. But it's still too thin. So if we were to click on that, you'll notice that we have this blue dimension up here. And if we were to click on this dimension and change its value, it's not 0.15, but 0.325. And then we're going to go ahead and rebuild it. So now we're ready for our draft feature. So let's go ahead and take our rollback bar and roll that back as we want to draft feature next. Remember to follow the directions on the website. So it's going to be right after the handle thickness, or as he calls it, but it's actually the hook holder. Or the hook mount, I should say. So let's go ahead and go up here to features and go to draft. So I'm not certain what the original value is. It's probably 1 degree, but we want to make that top box up here 5 degrees. It's going to be a 5-degree draft. And we're going to ignore all the other things, but pretty much kind of work our way down. And we're only going to be covering these 3 items. We're not going to worry about these elements in here too. That has to do with draft analysis, and we'll cover that at some future date. Next thing it's asking for is a neutral plane. It's the plane where the draft starts. You want that the front face, as I mentioned on the drawing on the website. You don't want it in the back. Otherwise, you're going to get it. It's going to draft this. Going to take a little bit too much material off, and you probably don't want to do that. And the faces to draft are going to be this face and this face. So you notice when you have multiple selections over here in the Properties Manager, that first selection is pink over here, so you can see right away which items are going to be impacted, which, where the neutral plane is going to be pink. And then this one's going to be blue. These are the faces to draft, so you can see right away in the modeling area, in the graphics area, what's going to happen. And if you go to the green check mark, now you have that draft in place. So if we go to the website and take a look at what we need to do, in fact, let's go up here to our mass properties. Let's go to evaluate and go to mass properties. You want to make sure with the options that we're up to 4 units after the decimal. You want to make sure at the higher element over here. Then the mass is supposed to be 0.0081. Now let's go ahead and take a look to see how we did over here. And this is going to be after the base feature and a hook mount, and then the hook mount draft. So we have, and after the hook mount hole, so it's actually after this one, because he's got the hole, but I didn't at this time. So be careful of your feature order over here. But the value over here is 0.0081 pounds, and then X is off by 0, Y is off by a negative 0.6027, and Z is off by 1032. So let's see if we got that. And it looks like we did. So there we go. You have the mass values over here, and that's what it should be in the drawing. So that's what you need to do. That's the draft feature. Be careful about feature order. Make sure your sketches are fully defined using the criteria I just showed you here, and I think you'll be all set. So one more thing that you might be thinking about, like, why didn't we just do this draft feature as part of our basic extrude or our hook mount extrude? And let me show you the reason behind that. So if you did a basic draft feature in here, you got to think about that neutral plane that I just introduced you to and how this actually resolves itself. If we do the mid-plane extrude on this thing, it's going to draft from that mid-plane. So let's take a look at that. Let's take a rollback bar and roll that back a little bit and take a look at how we could do that. So if we right-click on this and go down here to our draft item over here and make that 5 degrees, and it's going to be a mid-plane extrude, so it's going to go from that middle of the plane, that right plane, over there and do a little bit to the one side, a little bit to the other side. If we go to the green check mark over here, it actually kind of looks okay. Whoop, let's go ahead and do that. It's got a desirable look up here because you want to be able to pop out of the mold, but if you spin it around and take a look at that, it actually drafts from that very center in here. So what you're ending up getting up here are 2 solid bodies. You have the guy in the back, you have the guy in the front, and you're never going to be able to put a fillet around that. Now, conceivably, you can take some of the geometry in the back of that, sketch geometry, and do an extrusion to the next surface and other things. But this is the reason why we do this draft as a separate feature in situations like this, because you get geometry that you just can't work with unless you do some additional work on it.